Recording through a microphone. Bing, 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 bing. How should we start?
By saying hi.
Hi.
We're both in a goofy mood today.
We are in a goofy mood. Welcome back to my couch, Zach.
Hi.
Hi. We had a lovely question in the Discord that I will read to you now. Jumping in without further ado, maybe a shameless promotion too. If you haven't joined the Discord where some of these great questions are being asked, the link will be in the description below. And this is where we get into a lot of deeper stuff about the course and people ask questions. And if we got a question that we really like, we may have you on your question on the podcast to fully go through it. So Peter on the Discord says, okay, a question about words and images and how the unconscious processes them. A few times in the modules, it's been mentioned that the unconscious doesn't process negatives like don't or not, which has me wondering if it's time for me to retire/adjust the phrase, "you're not alone," that I sometimes say to clients.
Yes, retire that.
Yeah, I also said to him, absolutely. Do you have some suggestions for what would get across the same sentiment but in a positive way?
Yeah, just like I'm here, there's people there for you. It's just saying the same thing, but just in a without using negative terms along with it.
Yeah.
I don't even like the word alone, unless there's a point to that, but definitely not alone, because that doesn't mean that somebody's with you to the unconscious mind. It means alone.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we get into semantics and grammar structure, the object of that sentence is alone. So the focus, the punch of the sentence is alone. If I'm going to have a punchy sentence for a client who's in hypnosis or not in hypnosis, I'm just talking to, I want the punch of that sentence to be something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you, right? So even in the cadence of that sentence, I'm with you, right? You're not alone. You see the emphasis, the word that I'm stressing is alone. I don't want that to be. I want it to be with.
We'll do this together,
Or invite them, be here with me.
Yeah,
right.
That's great.
That's a great one. Be here. And so I talk about here, which is I'm with you, and also be present. So there's kind of a double intention with that sentence. But yeah, be very, very cautious. I think one of the ones that, eons ago, mutual acquaintance of ours, Dr. James Reaney, told me. He said, once you start to see this stuff, you'll never unsee it. He's one of the ones that shocked me the most when I kind of came out of this and realized how we talk negatively is when people talk about grief and you share something with them and they say, I'm so sorry to hear that. Ooh, what's the intention? The subconscious intention of that sentence is, I'm sorry you told me. I wish you'd kept your mouth shut.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. What are you sorry about? To hear that. The subconscious suggestion of guilt and shame for causing me to have to shoulder your burden with you. Mm-hmm. So since then I was also shocked, and since then I've changed my words. I say thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
Flip it around.
Especially with grief stuff. I just did this the other day. Is anytime you're dealing with grief, then the universe makes it so that all your clients are dealing with grief.
Man, it sure does seem like that, right? Whoa. Or stress, right? Yeah. When all my clients come in with stress is when I'm the most stressed.
What I said was the client was just I'm talking about their mom who just passed away, and the immediate reaction that I had to him was, instead of I'm sorry about that, it was, what was she like? And it's doubling down. I wanted to double down on wanting to talk about how she's still with him. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff there. The platitudes are oftentimes not very helpful.
They're the worst.
So think about that. Yeah. As far as what is it that you really want to get out of that first interaction? Is it that I want to double down? Yeah. Tell me about her.
Yeah.
What was she like?
Yeah.
I knew what she was like. I wanted him in that moment to feel, what is she like? She's still here. She's in your head.
Right. Could you tell me more, Zach, about why it's so important, and what we talk about in that module about speaking in the negative? When Peter says this, the unconscious doesn't process negatives like don't or not. What was he referring to?
Just as a general principle?
Yeah, in hypnosis.
Well, I don't think that the unconscious mind, like you were saying, as far as like what's the subject, the subject is alone. The subject is what did he
You're
say?
not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. I don't want to focus in on that, and the unconscious mind is going to grasp on to that because it doesn't understand all of the other words.
No,
it just understands like what that subject is. It's aloneness, and so then we're creating an anchor for feeling alone, and then therefore creating a space for that person to just hypnotize themselves on how many ways they are alone, or whatever that negative statement is.
right.
And the negative is not bad. Don't get us wrong with that. The negative is not bad. It is not that that statement is a bad statement. It is that statement is negative, meaning not whatever the next thing is going to be. Mm-hmm. And the unconscious mind doesn't start that. It doesn't understand that. It only understands the positive.
Yeah. We've started to use this with my son, Oliver, because babies, even more so than adults,
Absolutely.
don't understand negatives, right? So we found out, I haven't told you this, when he goes to a playground and he sees another kid there, he's a big boy. And he goes up to him and just shoves him. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I was like, we don't use any like corporal discipline at home. It's a lot of gentle parenting and correcting. I'm like, all right, so the behavior analyst in me gets all excited. I'm like, all right, what's going on here? I'm like, is he mad? Is he having emotion? He's like, no. He walks up, he makes a curious face. He kind of looks down his nose. He looks at him and then shoves him. And I'm like, oh, you're curious. You see a friend, he's very extroverted, he wants to play, but he doesn't know how to initiate play. So he's like, I'll give him a good shove. That way they pay attention to me so we can play together, right? And I tested this out. I was like, well, let me give him a toy and then prompt him to share that toy with another. Yep. Like maybe he's defensive about his space. Nope, easy sharing, right? And then I'm like, well, maybe it's, maybe he's frustrated at something. Nope, frustrated, easy to direct. He just wants to play, but he doesn't know how to start that. So I've started like co-playing with him whenever we go to these spaces, and I'll model how he can initiate play with another person to get them in instead of having to push. Yeah. I say all that because I think one of the natural things to do is sit him down and be like, we don't push. No pushing. Don't hurt other people. And at 2, because he's 2, people don't get that. Instead, we want to use the positive. And we use this a lot with him, right? We say gentle hands. Say thank you, say hello, wave, right? I want to give him instruction of what I want him to do. I don't even want to focus on the not.
The tools.
Right. I want him to focus on the direction he's trying to go. And so the principle in the class that, Peter's referencing here is you want to do the same thing when you're in that childlike trauma state with a person and you're trying to help them kind of come out of it. Don't tell them to not be anxious, or don't think about those things, or don't let it bother you. Or you're not alone. Tell them, I'm with you. You can do this. Be brave. Be confident.
Yeah.
Go boldly. Those are things I want them to move towards. The negatives are very distracting and counterintuitive.
Yeah, because you're just focusing in on pushing. Don't push. Push.
What did he hear?
Push. Push. And not only that, but he's going to feel like he doesn't have a way to get whatever it was that he needs. And so he wants to play. Now it's like, well, now I have 2 problems. I have I don't know how to play, and I'm bad for pushing.
Well, now I'm doubly messed up.
So I got to go figure out another way to do this, and I got to do that on my own.
Yeah. And what a good metaphor,
right?
For our work with trauma.
Exactly. It's the same thing, and I mean it's the same thing with dogs too. Didn't tell you this. We went to the dog shelter yesterday. I didn't get a dog. I'm not there, but
what?
For anybody
like, wait for a dog to walk through the door. No. It's like a Jerry Springer episode. Sandy, come on down. What?
No, there's not a dog in the office right now.
Okay, all right.
But for anybody that
wouldn't be mad. Wouldn't be mad.
Right.
Okay.
I'd be pretty upset if I got a dog from the shelter yesterday and then brought him in to be a therapy dog today.
That's fair.
I mean, I think that the training that I've been trained to do to help with creating a therapy dog is great, but not that good.
Not a day. You got him from the shelter yesterday.
But that's kind
so you
of
went to a shelter. Okay.
Yeah, and just for everybody, if you don't know, my service dog is very, very emotional for me.
Yes.
My service dog passed away in January. She was a PTSD and therapy dog. And I need another dog.
Yeah.
But I am absolutely not there yet. But we're doing some desensitization. Got to go play with some dogs. It was great.
That's cool, man.
But the cool thing about the metaphor here with dogs is the same thing with kids. There's a specific physicality that needs to be there. Like I want my kid to be able to know that we can be rough together under certain parameters, and I think that's good for the development and connection and stuff like that. Not too rough.
Supported by research.
And same thing with dogs. It's when somebody doesn't discipline their dog like a dog would be disciplined by its mother or something like that, which is with aggression, but not to hurt.
Yeah. Just to correct.
Yeah, and it's, a lot of people are like, oh, hit your dog. Like I really disagree with that, and I feel like I can train a dog with positive reinforcement to give them a way of communicating that is so much more effective in training that dog, and it's so much quicker in training that dog if there is the positive reinforcement, because then they trust you. With that said, I can't not be physical with the dog, especially if it's a big dog, and I like big dogs. I like strong dogs. You have to be physical with them.
Oh yeah.
But you see this, and I can identify because the day before we went to the East End Market, and there was a dog that I could see the connection between the owner and the dog, and I walked up to this lady and I asked, "Can I ask about your dog?" Said, "It seems like it trusts you a lot." She's like, "Yeah, it's a service dog." And even if they're not wearing their vests, a service dog is oftentimes easy to be spotted.
You can tell.
The biggest thing that you can see is, does that dog trust the human? So we're talking about
you can tell when a dog doesn't trust a human.
Exactly.
Obvious.
They're anxious, they're aggressive, they're frustrated, they're nervous, they're all of those things, especially in big crowds of people. It was a Asian festival. And I'm talking to them and everything like that. They got to share a beautiful moment with them.
That's awesome.
But the point is that trust. And if you're giving your client all of these negative reinforcements, which is not this, don't be that, don't this, what it's doing is it's going to create a distrust in the unconscious mind between not only you and them, but them and them. Because
say that again. It's going to create a distrust not only between you and them, but them and them.
But
that
them
was profound.
Yeah, I see it so often that the client doesn't trust themselves in the session because they've been only told all of the things that they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And it's so impactful to me is that Grace, my service dog, it was people saw how much we trusted each other.
Yeah.
And when you have that relationship between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind, to where it's like, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I'm uncomfortable, but it's safe for me to express this to you. That's so much more beautiful. And please, 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 if you're a therapist, don't create a relationship where the client can't trust themselves in front of you. That was my monologue.
That's good. No. I'm letting it sink in. And it's great metaphors, both with children and with pets, like dogs.
Yeah, and we do that. Some of the same hypnosis stuff with kids.
Yeah,
our kids they're in for a world of hurt as far as relationships go. and creating relationships where they demand space.
I see that, but I also reject the premise because they also have the skills and abilities taught through our relationships to handle bad relationships.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad.
No,
I know you meant it that way too.
Yeah.
They're going to expect a lot from their partner, though.
They should, and they should.
And justifiably demand a lot from their partner, which will cause their partner to grow or to quickly leave. Because they're like, I don't want this depth of a relationship.
It was very, very obvious when Addie came home one day, and I was asking him to do some emotions work, and he was just like, I tried to talk to named a kid in this class. He doesn't understand his emotions. I was like,
that's amazing.
Awesome, bud. You're 6.
That's amazing.
That's great that you're identifying that the other kids don't understand their emotions and they get flustered when all that they need to do is identify that they're angry and they have a little spot of anger in them.
A little spot of anger. Well, so believe it or not, that wasn't even the question. Peter goes on to say, but okay, here's my question.
Yeah.
Are there ways in which the unconscious processes images similarly to words in the sense that it doesn't differentiate between a negative and a positive image because images just are? So, for example, Peter says, could an anxious person fretfully imagining all the ways an upcoming social interaction could go wrong more likely to struggle in the interaction when it finally happens? Might the unconscious take that imagined material of faux pas, or like making a mistake, and do what it can to make those mistakes come to pass? In the same way, it hears this instead of, no, please not this. Does the same apply to images where the unconscious sees the mistake scenario a person is desperately trying to avoid and goes, okay, mistake, got it, yeah, coming right up? And I think it's a beautiful question, and I have a lot to say about that.
Well, why don't you start with that? Because I took it a couple of different ways.
Yeah, the way that I took Peter's question is not only does this apply to linguistics, but it applies to experiences and images. If you are going into a situation like a social networking event, per se, right? And you're like, well, I really hope I don't stutter. I really hope I don't, make a mistake. I really hope I don't slur my words or have food on my face or stumble, or I hope I don't look awkward with my hands. Don't. And so all the things that individual is focusing on is awkward hands, stuttering, making a flustered mistake with my words, seeming awkward. And so because that image inside of their mind is so readily apparent and they're trying to avoid it, they end up doing those things. And so in my response to Peter inside the Discord, I said, yes, absolutely. I think this is the core of self-sabotage. The core of self-sabotage being, I'm so focused on the thing that I don't want that all my conscious energy manifests it into happening because I'm so focused on what I don't want. A better response is to focus on what you do want because then it'll naturally lead to it. And, with a little bit of a smirk on my face inside of the Discord, I used a motorcycle metaphor. And I said inside of motorcycle riding, there's something called target fixation. And it accounts for a lot of crashes that people have when they're riding motorcycles because, you're having a great ride, you're enjoying your time, you're taking these corners and you're just kind of flowing through them. It feels like surfing, right? And I like surfing too. I grew up surfing, and so it feels very similar. But the problem is you take a corner a little bit too fast. You push a little bit outside your comfort zone. And so you see the barrier coming up and you're going a little bit wide because you're carrying some speed into the corner. And so what people do incorrectly is they're like, oh my gosh, the barrier is coming at me fast. Well, as soon as you lock eyes on the barrier, you tilt the bike toward it, your hands move toward it, and you crash right into it.
Yeah.
And so the thing you have to train out of yourself when riding a motorcycle, and appropriate metaphor for this situation, is you have to ignore that barrier. I had a corner, I did that. The one 414 going into 436 when you're coming off that 414 Maitland Road?
Yeah.
And it's got that big loop, and then it goes this way. I wanted to see how fast I could take it. And so I was like, we are right on the edge of Jesse's skill level, right? And I was like, don't look at it. And so I leaned over pretty good, and I powered right out of it. But it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is what you've trained for. It's like, focus on where you want to go, ignore the obstacles. And you can see it out of your peripheral. Like, I would have known if I was definitely going to crash. You can see where the lines are at your peripherals, but I'm locked in on I'm exiting the corner in that spot. And it's the same thing you want to do. That's where the power of hypnosis really is. Yep. Because in the safety of the therapeutic environment, with the skill and words of the therapist, you get to eliminate that person's distractions, create a sense of deep focus on the goal that you want them to achieve and the experience you want them to achieve, and guide them toward that experience, so that way they know what to focus on when the bad things happen.
And just to add to this, I think a lot of trauma therapies, one might do this badly. They do this badly. Is they actually give a whole lot of emphasis to whatever the negative is.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say trauma therapy.
They structure the organization of the trauma therapy based on the negatives.
Exactly.
Based on the trauma itself, which I think hypnosis takes a completely different approach and structures the process of therapy on what we want to achieve. And I think that's why we see so much difference in the success. Sort of railroading your monologue there, but I just got excited.
Yeah, if our focus is like how bad these traumas were and what the person needs in order to overcome this really, 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 really terrible thing, and it's so terrible, and it's so terrible, and it's so terrible, and it's so terrible, well, the person is going to have a lot of repression with that, because even if they do get desensitized to whatever the trauma was, it's still a fixation and an anchor point.
Yeah.
And maybe we should say, maybe not the therapies give the suggestion to focus in on the trauma. It can go unaddressed, but how are we? And I would ask a lot of therapists this: how are you using that technique in order to make it so that the point and the subject of their life is not that trauma?
Now, I think a lot of people heard us say that, and I'm afraid that they're asking the question of, are you then saying that hypnotherapy ignores the trauma and focuses on the positive?
That's not what we're saying.
How would you respond to that question?
It needs to be a yes and. It needs to be like, yes. And so whatever the trauma is, let's take a military PTSD. Like,
sure, it's a great example.
This client years ago that saw his best friend get incinerated, and it was just lucky that he was behind a barrier, that the IED went off on the other side of the barrier, and watched one of his battle buddy passed away. And so it's like, I don't want to say like, oh, that didn't happen. What I want to say is, going back to what was she like? It was, I want to carry that with me as a point of strength, not as a point of weakness. I want it to come with us. I do the desensitize.
You got it.
I don't know if I do.
Desensitization.
The desensitization process. I want to go through that, and I want the emotions to stay in the brain and not go into the body as much. And when they do, I want to get them to experience how they can regulate their body in order to match what the brain is doing, rather than just their body being taken over by it.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly not going to not address that trauma. That is the focal point for why they are in therapy.
Not what we're saying.
But the goal is to create a strength out of it, a positive memory out of it, a metaphoric shrine in their head for how wonderful that relationship was.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, we're certainly not overlooking the trauma or ignoring the trauma. But I love what you said. It's a yes and. Yes, the trauma, we're acknowledging the trauma, but we're moving toward something with the trauma being our springboard toward that thing, which is a very different model than I think you see most modern trauma recovery systems work.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, I'm just very aware of this. I'm wearing the pants that I took a turn too quickly on.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I let the bike. I put the bike down and.
This is your wallet
slid.
or something. It's got a hole.
Yeah. I slid. My shirt was torn almost off me. My pants.
Your ribs were pretty bruised up. I saw that.
Yeah, a little hole in them right here.
Nice. I think, okay, so follow-up question then. If we're not just ignoring that and we're moving through it, what does that process kind of look like? How do you take someone's very negative focus and turn it towards the positive? Are there some helpful pieces of advice that you could kind of use to illustrate what that looks like and how it's different in hypnosis?
Yeah, well, I mean, first it would be the desensitization. So that's the lighter side of things, and so I'm going to be trying to put them in a deeper state of consciousness.
So sort of taking away some of the emotional power of that memory?
Yeah, well, I maybe this is a good point to explain that is, what we know about the science behind it is, everybody has, when people say, I'm very emotional, I'm an emotional person, or something along those lines, it's like, that's not really how it works. Like emotions are in the brain.
Good clarification.
And affect is in the body. And so, what happens a lot of times when we don't give credence to the emotions that are in the brain says, no, this is important. So we're sending it to the body. So you have to have physiological response to this emotion that we're having here. Yeah. So going back to the kids too, is like Addie was talking about how his friends can't regulate their emotions.
Yes.
And it's because they don't have a way to communicate, like we were talking about, a positive aspect of what I'm afraid, I want to play, this makes me mad. How do you communicate that? If we communicate it appropriately and validate that emotion in the head, then it doesn't go to the body. But what happens in trauma is that there's a cutoff there that makes it so that we don't validate the big emotions in the head, and then the unconscious mind gets in a loop of, we need to validate this. This really hurt. We can't go back to this space again. I don't want to experience this again. And we're sitting here pushing it down and pushing it down and pushing it down. And then the unconscious mind finally says, fuck it. I'm sending all these emotions to the amygdala, and you're going to feel it. If you're not willing to accept this, if you're not willing to sit in the space, I'm going to make you. And you're going to have a panic attack.
It's like that moment when a bomb goes off, like especially in the water, it kind of sucks everything into it.
Yeah.
And then it blows up.
Yeah.
It's like that moment of like crushing. So it's like a spark, and then it goes.
So
that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. That's what it feels like every time somebody has a panic attack.
Yeah.
It's like. So the first part would be desensitization, to make it so that it is okay for us to have the emotions and the thoughts in the brain, and it's safe enough to make it so that the unconscious mind doesn't have to force it into our bodies to experience it. That's going to happen, and it's not a one or the other. It's a how much is being flooded, how big is that bomb.
Yeah.
So it's got to be in our body, and to process it effectively. So we'll go back to this client.
Okay.
The client has the trauma is not just because he lost his best friend, and the only person that was ever going to have his experience and be able to communicate and validate his experiences in the military. He felt, I was in control, we were good, and then all of a sudden, at this moment, I lost all control and I lost everything. So the trauma is actually, I've lost everything, I had no control over that, and then this can happen at any moment.
It's the follow through. And I'll take a moment there if I could pause to add a sidebar to this. I think a lot of people also ask the question of, well, if all that you're saying is true, Zach, why is it that hypnotherapists will sometimes focus on and amplify an experience, right? Like, this seems counterintuitive to the idea of validating someone's trauma, right? If you're trying to move past it and trying to move towards a goal, then why do I see so many trauma therapists talk about validating someone's trauma? Yes, you can't move past it and towards the goal if you don't know what it is that is taking place, and a lot of times because the brain wants to not trauma, it moves very quickly and makes a lot of lies up. It believes a lot of false ideas about the trauma in its attempt to try and shove that down. And so the process of validating has to take place first before we get to the desensitization, right? We have to know what it is we're desensitizing in order to desensitize it effectively, right? Like take the example with my child. I needed to study his play very, very closely in order to know what it is the goal that we're trying to achieve. So instead of being like, don't hit, don't push. I mean,
if that's the subject, which it's not.
Yeah, which is because he's the size of a 4-year-old, but he's 2. So he was, I tell you what, he got some hands.
I love that.
Me too, man. I was talking to my wife afterwards. I was like, he never gonna be bullied in school, man. You go give it right back to him. But I had to validate, right, using this example, validate his pushing first to be like, okay, what is he doing? I didn't move away from the pushing and chastise him for it. I said, let me really get intimately acquainted with this symptom, right? What is he doing? Oh, he wants to play. He's happy. He wants to play. Now I can desensitize, move through, set a new goal. So I want to add that sidebar. I think some people get confused with being like, well, what does this talk about validation? It's like validation is a prerequisite to desensitization, at least in the way that I think about the system.
And with the client, the actual trauma that needs to be validated is this terrible thing can happen, and you don't know how to deal with it if your whole life is taken away from you at that one point.
Right.
Not the actual just death. Not the that moment.
So the validation in your example was we moved towards the trauma by saying this isn't actually a trauma about your friend's death. It's a trauma because of I'm not in control and I'm never in control. And that's a false conclusion. Yeah. There are some times you're in control. There are some times you're not in control. We have to make peace and desensitize the terror to that reality about living. Because there are some times you're in control, sometimes you're not. We can't go, I'm always in control, or I'm never in control. That's black and white trauma thinking. Mm-hmm. So validate first, which is what you did. Then we're desensitizing, making peace with that truth, and now moving towards the goal.
Yep.
But you had something to add. After the desensitization, what's the next piece?
After the desensitization, then of this, you may not be in control all the time. And also, just as a caveat, we're talking about a whole bunch of work that in a very short amount of time.
Oh, yeah.
On my first session with this client, I wasn't like, you're not traumatized by your best friend's death.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. Well, I mean, I've got a client that, it's a borderline personality disorder type case, which takes years. And so we've been working on this for 5 years.
Yeah.
And we're getting to a really incredible spot. This individual's never been at this level of emotional self-control and like trauma resilience, but it has taken 5 years of demonstrating. I think the very first thing was that you can trust me and I'm there for you.
Yeah, sure.
We had to build that for 3 years before we can get to the next piece, which is I'm learning skills to regulate my emotions. So yeah, I mean, we're condensing down into a 45-minute conversation, 5-6 years of work for like my case example.
And
great point.
Speaking of which, the other day, you were somebody. I don't know if you noticed it, but you said you made a comment about seeing somebody for years, and they were just like, oh my gosh, I like, why do they need that much time? And I was like, I'm gonna let this one go. But the
I love that you catch things that I just sometimes don't.
Yeah,
that's great.
You don't remember that?
No, it was just a regular conversation throughout the day.
Yeah, they were just like, I usually get done with my clients because they don't need me anymore in, like months. And I was like, one, they never needed you.
Love that. Love that, yes. Let's get that straight.
2, you're doing some depth work at showing them how they can better process everything rather than just dealing with that one desensitization. So kind of merging these two ideas together is the next goal. Once it's desensitized enough to look at the real trauma like this, then there's an integration of this into the rest of their life. Again, super broad, lots of time needing to be spent on that. But if I can say, I can't feel like the trauma is, I can't feel this type of loss ever. Like, it's not okay. And then they go to see a therapist, and the therapist is just like, all right, well, let's just do the desensitization. Let's just do the work to make it so that you don't have these symptoms. You deal with the symptoms of PTSD. The person sleeps better. The person doesn't have panic attacks. They don't have dissociations, but they still have this thought. I can never go back to that space. I can never feel that feeling again. It's going to get them into that trauma experience again. So
it's an unrealistic promise to yourself.
Exactly.
I can never feel this again. You can't promise that to yourself.
And I need to be in control. And what that person probably would have done if we just addressed the symptoms of PTSD is that they would be over-controlling in their relationships. They would be isolationist.
And you see that with a lot of veterans.
Exactly.
They get very controlling in their relationships. And I can't place all the blame on them. Like, I get why you feel that controlling in relationships.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose somebody again.
I don't want to. I can't lose them again like that. Yeah, like that can't be the case. So I'm just going to isolate myself to make it so that I never feel that feeling.
Yeah.
But you sleep good. Like, better maybe. And so that if I was going to break it down into two giant steps, it would be the desensitization and then the reintegration. Like I absolutely.
I think it's great.
Can lose somebody.
Yeah.
It will probably happen, actually. If I live long enough, I will feel this again.
So let's take this very big, intense example, right? And let's
it is intense.
Yeah, very intense. And let's make it a little bit more maybe accessible to the everyday individual. If I'm somebody coming to you, Zach, and I'm like, listen, what Peter's talking about is me, dude. Like, I'm going into these social situations. My therapist tells me I need to make friends, but I know that I'm so painfully awkward when I'm trying to make a new friend that nobody's going to make a friend with me. I've got a lot of self-doubt. I stub my toe. I trip as I'm walking in the room. I fumble my words. Like, I know that I'm the one who's thinking about all these negative things, and that's sabotaging my ability to make relationships. What do I do?
My first response is, bro, me too.
Yeah.
Me too, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people do not like how awkward I am. And that makes making friends difficult. A lot of people don't like it. I talk about things that a large majority of the population says that you shouldn't talk about on your first date, your first meeting, your first conversation.
Yeah.
I'm very awkward.
So I just embrace my awkward?
Let's
Is that what I should do?
Do a lot more of that. What I'm going to probably do is give them some sort of experience to where it's safe, and that's what we do. In that reintegration, after there's the what is the actual trauma? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have that. I've always been quite awkward. Good example.
Okay.
People will say, hey, here's an event. Dress business casual. I have no fucking idea what that means.
I've heard you tell me about this. You're like, Jesse, I'm so upset today. Why? They told me to dress business casual, and I don't know what that means. I'm like, well, Zach, text me a picture of what you're planning on wearing. I'm like, okay, I might change this.
I have no idea what that means. And I have so much trauma about showing up to a place, especially as a kid or a teenager, a young adult, and then people are being like, Zach, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you? They told you what you should wear. I was like, no, they didn't. They did not tell me what to wear.
They did not.
And so that's a good example of what is this nervousness about when I'm getting dressed to go to this wedding. We just went to a wedding together. And it was great. Like it was fun, but no. I think
breathe, Zach. Breathe.
I texted the groom and I was just like, "What should I wear?" He was just like, "I don't know, casual Sunday wear." I was like, "I don't."
Less helpful. Actually, I think that made it worse.
less helpful. But so we get to the what is the trauma? The trauma was being made to feel stupid for not knowing the thing that everybody knows that nobody talks about. The reintegration. Yes, I want to embrace the fact that I don't know in those situations what everybody else knows. So the reintegration happens kind of in two ways in the situation. I talk to a friend about who gets it.
Text me a picture. What are you planning on wearing?
Or what I do is I say, this is safe enough for me to do whatever it is that I want to do. So, big meeting. I had a big meeting just a couple months ago, and there was a Army might be a 1-star soon, who's a friend of mine and a U.S. attorney that were in this meeting. And I showed up in
Basically
what I show up in.
Yeah.
A black shirt. That is a very particular shirt that I like. A hoodie, some jeans, and some barefoot shoes. And the comment that I got from the U.S. attorney was, I love how brave you are. I had no idea what he was talking about, but he's just like, you really don't care what all of these important people think about you. No, I do. I do very much.
Right.
But I also know that this is a safe place, that even if these people do say, Zach, you didn't address appropriately, I know that I'm safe enough to be inappropriate.
Nice. Lunchtime.
It's safe enough to be who I am. And so that on an everyday basis, you may not be dealing with people getting incinerated.
Yeah. Was there more?
Yeah.
I often tell people, like when they're having that sort of fear, it's like, okay, well, we have to have in the safety of like some space away from this. Let's create an image of what you want this to look like. And I think a lot of people like imagine this scenario that just is not helpful to them. They think they're going to be like Tom Cruise walking into a room and just owning the place. It's like, well, but you're not Tom Cruise. So like, I love that. Like, it's a good first try, but that's not going to be a helpful goal for you, right? Instead, let's make it a little bit more simple and a little bit more replicatable, right? It's like, if somebody tells you like, what are you wearing? What are you going to respond to that? In the safety of this room, like, let's talk about like what could your responses be, right? Be like, you could say, hey, like, the invitation actually wasn't very clear to me, like what I was supposed to wear. Or it's like, hey, I'm an authentic kind of guy. This is what I wear, right? So like, you kind of have a canned response. Or it's like, if you fumble one of your words, like, what are you gonna do? If you have a system in place and you think about how you want these things to go, you can do that. But expecting yourself to come up with a solution when you've just fumbled your words and you're in a panic deer in the headlight moment, it's just not a realistic expectation for you. Let's talk this through. Let's plan it. Let's script it.
How do you make it safe? How do you make that scenario safe?
Right.
What do you need to do to make it so that you're comfortable in that scenario and it's safe?
Yeah. If you get overwhelmed, where are you going to go? And I've had situations like this very literally where somebody got invited out to a concert and to a bar afterwards, right? And they're like, Jesse, I hate this. I was like, I get you. I was like, but I know that you want to go. I know you want to make some more friends in your life. So let's talk about how this is going to go for you. Let's work it through. No, it's a client. I was like, well, if you get overwhelmed, where are you going to go? Great, but here's the problem. So I would help actually predict the problems. I'd be like, well, what about this? What about this? I was kind of playing the conscious skeptic of like, getting in the way of stuff. And be like, well, when they say, well, where are you going? What are you going to say? I'd be like, I just need to use the restroom. Great. I hope you remember that.
But look what you're doing there. For everybody else is you're creating the safety and the image of, going back to our first conversation today, you're creating the image in their head of the positive rather than the negative.
Right. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Yeah. So how do you make it so that it's safe? How do you create an image? And that's the exact same thing as you're not alone versus I'm here with you.
Well, and I think this is helpful for those recovering from complex trauma, which is what I deal a lot with. A lot of times people say you should go take a self-defense class. And I love that too, but only if we do it right.
Right.
Because, you know, for me as well, there are certain scenarios where I may not be able to keep myself safe because I'm overwhelmed by some trap that someone set for me. I mean, it's just realistic. I'm not Superman. But by going to a self-defense class or by thinking about my own violence, like what I am capable of myself, and I tell my, you know, some of them view themselves as very small, petite, feminine figures. By recognizing that they also have the capacity for violence and starting to think about these things, what will you do? Mm-hmm. They recognize that there's some situations, you know, I can't overcome everything.
Yeah.
But there are other situations where I can. I have violent options at my disposal. I have, and that doesn't look like, you know, necessarily murdering anybody, but it's like, are you going to scream? Are you going to pepper spray somebody? Are you going to tase somebody? Right? And so just by thinking of these things, we're thinking about the positive. Like, I don't want to be in a place of shock because I was naive and didn't spend the time thinking about what I'm going to do.
Because when we focus in on, so when we do that work wrong, it's like this thing that so many people will do. It's like, I can feel this. My Muay Thai kicks are pretty good. That doesn't help me when I'm not feeling safe with my partner.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
And so it's that process of empowering them rather than just giving them a coping mechanism.
Yes. Let's take a good hard look at this. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm advocating for. Let's be honest.
Don't kick your partner.
Don't kick your partner. Great advice from the one and only Zach Dodson. On that note, don't kick your partners in the face. Take care of yourselves. Drink some water. Take your vitamins. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah.
Until then.
Bye.
Bye.